On today's edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the UFC 291 co-main event between Jan Blachowicz and Alex Pereira. Let's get into it. This is going to be a part of that card that features Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier having their rematch in the main event. It's going to be taking place in Salt Lake City, Utah, so a bit of elevation here. If you've never watched a show before, my name is James Lynch. I go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles, and then I give you my pick at the end. Some of this stuff may have relevance, it may not. I like to look at every little angle when it comes to breaking down fights. So let's have a quick look at the tail of the tape like we usually do when it comes to this exciting fight in the light heavyweight division. The former champion Jan Blachowicz at 205, I should say, because they're both former champions. 29-9-1. Alex Pereira just 7-2, but obviously a lot of kickboxing experience. 40 years old compared to 36. 6'2" to 6'4", 78 to 80. So even though Pereira's moving up, he's going to have a height and reach advantage in this fight. But we're actually going to start first with the former light heavyweight champion, Jan Blachowicz. 29-9-1 record. You can see it there. First 3-round fight for Jan Blachowicz in a little bit here. His last fight, I think, was 5 rounds against Ankalaev, if I'm not mistaken. Or was it? Yeah, it was 5 rounds. That's right. Ended in a draw. Doesn't have too many 3-round fights. Rakic was a 3-round fight now that I think about it. So I kind of jumped the gun there talking about that. But a lot of interesting things here with Jan Blachowicz. Again, you look at the age, 40 years old. Like I mentioned, they're 6'2" with a 78-inch reach. He's the 3rd ranked UFC light heavyweight. He's got 9 knockouts, 9 submissions, and 11 decisions. He's the former KSW light heavyweight champion as well. He's the 2nd Polish UFC champion in UFC history after Joanna Jędrzejczyk. He's a BJJ black belt. He's got performance of the night 5 times against Devin Clark, Nikita Krylov, Luke Rockhold, Corey Anderson, and Dominic Reyes. He's also got fight of the night 1 time against Jimmy Manua. Jan Blachowicz never had an amateur debut. He went straight to the pros way back in February of 2007. Actually lost that fight. There's actually a handful of really notable fighters that lost their pro debut, including Jan Blachowicz, like I just mentioned there. Did not make his UFC debut until October of 2014, but did fight in KSW, which at the time has, and still does, has some great talent over there, right? A couple of UFC vets on the way there. Mario Miranda, Sokaju, you got Hussein Alexander, Goran Relic, so a lot of names there before he made his debut at UFC Fight Night 53, which is, like I said, back in October of 2014. Jan Blachowicz is 13-6-1. He's got 7 stoppage wins. Some notable wins in his UFC career include Jared Cannonier, Luke Rockhold, Corey Anderson, Dominic Reyes, Israel Adesanya, and Alexander Rakic. Some notable losses he has include Corey Anderson, Alexander Gustafsson, Thiago Santos, Glover Teixeira. So there you go. Some pretty star-studded names there in that weight class as far as who he's fought. Blachowicz has been pretty active throughout his career. If you look at kind of when he's fighting at least 1-2 times a year. The layoff, the amount of days going into this fight, so we fought Ankalaev in December. This fight's in July. There's a 231-day layoff, so it's decent, but nothing like too worrisome. Again, I think Blachowicz would have liked to have fought sooner, but there was an issue with who he was going to fight, and we still, at the time of recording this, don't know when champion Jamal Hill will be defending his title, so we're kind of waiting on that a little bit, but a very exciting matchup nonetheless. He's had a couple injuries in his career, Jan Blachowicz, that is, despite the fact that he's been pretty active. He's supposed to fight at UFC 191 against Anthony Johnson. Imagine if we would have got that fight. He ended up getting rebooked there. There was some sort of issue there. Johnson instead fought. He instead fought Corey Anderson on that card. It was Johnson who was out of it, and then he got booked to the Corey Anderson fight, which he ended up losing, which is interesting. So no injury there. Scratch what I just said on that. Then he was supposed to fight OSP at UFC Fight Night 104. Had an undisclosed injury there. Then he was supposed to fight Alexander Rakic the first time in March. He had a neck injury. Ended up fighting him a couple months later in May. So there you go. Pretty active guy, Jan Blachowicz. Blachowicz has had a couple close fights. If you look back on MMADecisions.com, you can see how people scored it. So let's go back to the Patrick Cummins fight. That was the one he lost. I was actually at that fight. That was that Buffalo card back in 2017. Went back and looked at the media scorecards for that one. 10 media members scored the fight for Cummins. 6 thought it should have been a draw. So maybe that doesn't end up being a loss there for Jan Blachowicz. The Jacare Souza win that he had in 2019 in November. 9 media members scored the fight for Jan. 7 scored it for Jacare. So again, bit of a closer fight than for comfort, so to speak. That was a split decision win there. And then when he fought Adesanya, I thought he clearly won, but I went back and looked at the media scorecards there. 19 media members had it for Jan Blachowicz. 7 media members scored it for Israel Adesanya. I'm a bit surprised by that, but I guess with Adesanya's name value, maybe some people kind of felt like he did win it. And then the Ankalaev fight's interesting. I thought Ankalaev won. It ended up being a draw. Went back and looked at the media scorecards for that. That's UFC 282 back in December of 2022. 22 media members scored the fight for Magomed Ankalaev, just 2 scoring it for Jan Blachowicz. So that in all likelihood could have been a loss for him there, but he lives to survive with a draw in that fight. And as far as the UFC stats go, there's like to do that on this breakdown. If you look at it there, Jan Blachowicz, significant strikes landed per minute, 3.41, which is decent. Significant striking accuracy, 49%, so not even half of his strikes are landing. Significant strike defense is at 54%, which is not bad. Takedown defense at 68%, although I don't think we're going to see many takedowns in this fight. And his takedown average is 0.97, which I think is interesting because when you talk about a path to victory for Jan Blachowicz, I would think it would be getting it to the ground. Why play fire with fire? Fighting a really good striker here in the former Glory kickboxing champ, Alex Pereira. So yeah, that's everything you need to know about Jan Blachowicz. Great story in his career, of course, starting his UFC career, 4-3, I think, where he went 2-4 to start his career and then ended up becoming the champ. So pretty incredible story. Going to be trying to get an interview with Jan Blachowicz at the time I'm recording this. I will likely get him, but have not got an interview with him yet, but we still got some time. It's July 29th. It's only June 25th at the time I'm recording this. All right, let's get to his opponent, the former middleweight champion, Alex Pereira. You can see it there, 7-2 record. He's got 6 knockouts, no submissions, and 1 decision. He's 36 years old. Well, he will be 36 by the time he takes this fight. He's 35 now. He's actually going to be turning 36 on July 7th. July 7th is when he'll be turning 35. He's 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. So he'll have a 2-inch height and reach advantage in this fight. And he's 4 years younger than Jan Blachowicz. He's got a black belt in kickboxing. Like I mentioned there, former Glory middleweight and light heavyweight champion. He trains at a Team Teixeira. We saw Sean Strickland over there at a little while ago. And he's the former middleweight champion, of course, losing his belt to the current champ, Israel Adesanya. And he's got performance of the night 3 times against Andre Mikulina, Sean Strickland, and Israel Adesanya. He did not have an amateur debut. Of course, a lot of kickboxing experience. Don't really think he needed to get any sort of amateur experience there. Made his pro debut in October of 2015. So much like his opponent, Jan Blachowicz did lose his pro debut. That was a submission loss in the 3rd round. That was in October of 2015, and then made his UFC debut in November of 2021, which wasn't that long ago. Again, that was against Mikulina, a fight that he actually got done in the 2nd round. So you can see it there. A couple other things with Alex Pereira. His kickboxing record was 33-7. He had 21 knockouts. He defeated Israel Adesanya twice in kickboxing. We talked about this in the last breakdown with Alex Pereira because, again, you look at, people always bring up that he beat Adesanya twice. Context in those matchups matter a little bit. I'll just quickly mention them, not in as much detail. The first fight was a decision win for Pereira, people feeling like Adesanya should have taken that one. And then the second fight, Adesanya actually, I think, was ahead on the scorecards, and Pereira ended up knocking him out. So, he does officially have 2 wins over Adesanya, but the context does matter a little bit when you're talking about Pereira's wins in kickboxing. Pereira's only got a couple UFC fights, so obviously no major layoffs there, no major injuries, and hasn't had any close fights because he just had the 1 decision against Bruno Silva, which was a fight that really wasn't that close. I thought he clearly won. And let's check out these UFC stats. These are pretty staggering here, which is great. If you look at Alex Pereira, significant strikes landed per minute, 5.23. So that's a lot higher than Jan Blachowicz at 3.41. So a bit of a difference there. And then Alex Pereira, significant striking accuracy, 59%. So that's also higher than Blachowicz. Significant strike defense, 54% there. You can see that. And his takedown defense is at 73%, which I think is a key stat here because, Adesanya tried to take him to the ground a little bit. I'm assuming Blachowicz is going to want to do the same thing here. So 73% takedown defense, which is great, but also factor in he hasn't had that many UFC fights, so it's hard to gauge if that's, really like if he's going to be able to stuff his takedowns. Well, we're going to find out in this fight. And his takedown average, so no one's surprised, is 0.28, which is obviously very low. We do have odds for this fight. A couple books do have it up right now. If you look at it there, you'll see Jan Blachowicz, which they spelled wrong on here. They always do that every now and then. You can see Jan Blachowicz. They call him Jan Blachowicz. I don't know what that means, but you can see there a couple books, Bet365 and FanDuel, having Blachowicz at about -164, -150. Alex Pereira being the underdog. And then if you look on Tapology, which we always do, the fan voting, you've got 55% having Blachowicz, 45% Pereira. So that's almost similar to what the odds are right now. Okay, this is a tough one because I think the big question, and this is something I've talked about on my live streams as well, is Alex Pereira's power going to translate to 205? Like, he's gotten all these knockouts at middleweight and he's looked outstanding, and we obviously saw him get knockouts in kickboxing and, everything else. And he is really a light heavyweight fighter, right? I think we can agree on that he was big for the weight class. And you can almost argue that his last fight, the loss to Israel Adesanya, was due to the weight cut, right? So you would assume that, that difference in the weight, the fact that he's going to be fighting at 205 should help his chin a bit as far as him getting knocked out. But Yeah, I think light heavyweight is the right weight class for him there. So that's one thing that I think we got to figure out. Like, it's one thing, you know, like we often hear of fighters moving up and maybe not having as much success. Israel Adesanya himself lost to Jan Blachowicz moving up a weight class, right? So I'm always kind of weary about fighters moving up. And I think in the case of Pereira, he really is a 205er. So I don't think it's going to be much of a factor. In fact, like I said, he's going to have a height and reach advantage in this fight. So there's that. I think there's the ability for Pereira to knock out Jan Blachowicz. But I think a key thing here is that this is only a 3-round fight. It's not 5 rounds. So I think if it was 5, I would lean more towards Pereira in this fight because of the fact there's more opportunity for him to get the knockout. If you look at Jan Blachowicz's career in terms of him getting finished, this is, I think, a key thing here. Okay, Ankalaev, I think, has some power. Not as much as, obviously, Pereira, I would say, but he wasn't able to finish him. Rakic, there was an injury there that was kind of a weird win. Glover Teixeira submitted him in the 2nd round, but he didn't knock him out. Like, and I don't think Blachowicz even got rocked in that fight. So that's another kind of interesting thing. Although, who's his teammate, Alex Pereira. So it'll be interesting to see if there's some insight there. Thiago Santos was a 3rd round knockout loss. And then you got to go all the way back to, like, I mean, he's never been finished early in a fight, right? And like I said, this is 3 rounds. I suppose, you know, Santos did finish him in the 3rd. It's possible Pereira does that too in this case. But I don't know, man. Like, I think, like, the way I kind of look at this fight here is that I think Blachowicz has a couple ways to win this fight. I think he himself could knock out Alex Pereira. We know he's got power, the Polish power, of course, knocking out Dominic Reyes and so many other fighters, Luke Rockhold, to name a few. But we know that the takedowns have been pretty successful, like when he fought Israel Adesanya. We know his ground game's pretty good too. Pereira doesn't really have that. All Pereira has is the striking and the knockout power. That's it. And that could determine this fight. But again, I think if you're talking about who's more well-rounded, it's Jan Blachowicz. The age is a little concerning though at 40. Like, at some point he's got to decline. You can definitely bet on that. You know, is this the fight where we're going to see Blachowicz decline a little bit? And then you look at Alex Pereira as far as his knockout wins in MMA. He did finish Sean Strickland in the 1st round, but Strickland kind of, like, he just had a bad game plan, right? Strickland even said himself at the presser going into that fight, like, oh, I'm a better striker than these Glory guys. Well, he found out the hard way because he ended up losing that fight. So, you know, as much as he finished, you know, Strickland in the 1st round, that's one thing. Michelinas was a 2nd round finish. And then Adesanya, the first win, the knockout win he got over Adesanya was a 5th round finish. There aren't going to be 5 rounds in this fight. So yeah, long story short, I think Jan Blachowicz wins this. I think he wins the decision, though. I don't think he finishes Alex Pereira. If I'm Jan Blachowicz, I'm going to try and get this fight to the ground. And I think with the fact that Blachowicz is going to be a lot stronger than, say, Israel Adesanya, I think he will be successful in getting the takedown at some point in this fight. And again, with it being 3 rounds, I do think that favors Jan Blachowicz just because Pereira, you know, he can always have that threat of the knockout. And like I said, if there's any questions about his cardio or anything, I mean, he went 5 rounds with Adesanya at middleweight where he's cutting more weight. I think at 205, his cardio is going to be even better. And I think there is still that threat of him being able to knock out Blachowicz if it was later. I know that's almost backwards. I know there's going to be people being like, well, it's less rounds. It should favor Pereira because he's got more power. I get that argument, but I'm also saying that I think because it's only 3 rounds, I think if he can't get the, like, if he doesn't get the knockout punch, which is, I think, his only way to win this, I don't think he wins, and I think Blachowicz does. So I like Blachowicz here by decision. That's where I'm kind of leaning here. I think it's also possible for him to get a finish. If you want to hedge Blachowicz decision and Pereira by knockout, I think that's probably a good idea. I suppose Pereira could win a decision. We did see him defeat Bruno Silva, like we mentioned there, but I think more likely if Pereira's going to win, it's going to be by knockout. And I just think that's so tough to do against a really high-level guy in Jan Blachowicz, who, like I said, we have not seen chinny or anything like that. Like I said, the only concern there is the age and the fact that he has been knocked out before. But yeah, I'm going to go Jan Blachowicz by decision to get it done over Alex Pereira in a fight that's going to just be awesome because, again, we're going to really find out how good Alex Pereira is at 205. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Which way you lean in here? You agree or disagree with my assessment here? I'm always liking to talk to you guys and hear what you're thinking on big fights like this. Again, follow me, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, at Lynch on Sports. And if there's any other fights you want me to preview that are coming up, just know that, you know, any main events, any title fights, any big name fights that are coming up, I probably will preview it. But let me know in the comments anyways if there's an intriguing fight you want me to break down from a stats perspective. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time in another edition of Early Look.